Hello everyone, Cercion here. How are you all doing today? Welcome to episode 7 of my 100% playthrough of Dragon Quest XI. In the last episode, we bought a dancer's outfit. In today's episode, we'll be cataloging the monsters of both the Lagoona di Lagolia and Grotta della Fonte into our bestiary, scavenging some goodies to add to our Itemary, and defeating this game's 5th boss, Jasper. With all that out of the way, let our adventure continue. The first thing we do upon loading up our save is head on over to the Galapagos racetrack to purchase the golden reins before entering both the easy and difficult versions of the bronze and silver races. The golden reins trivializes any challenge these races once posed, and we swiftly nab ourselves a pair of slime earrings, a set of Galapagos garb, a golden bracer, and an assassin trinket upon their completion. However, in order to 100% this game, I'm forced to go through these races several more times in order to try and beat their challenge times. It takes roughly an hour and a half or so, but after 20 something attempts I'm able to beat the bronze race's challenge time, with the silver race's challenge time being toppled just 10 or so attempts later. Purchasing the golden reins and attempting these races over and over again wound up putting a massive hole in my wallet, so I spent the next hour or so swiping suits of iron armor and iron broadswords from Russ's armors, along with several chunks of golden ore from some golden globes, which I sold to boost my profits back to a stable state. With that done, I made sure to grab this guard's side quest before entering the Lagoona to begin a brand new cataloging spree. The first monster I wind up encountering is a splatty punk, which has a 1 in 8 chance of dropping some fine fur and a 1 in 256 chance of dropping a fur hood. Following that is a muddy hand, which has a 1 in 16 chance of dropping a medical herb and a 1 in 256 chance of dropping a strength ring. Shortly after that, I wind up encountering a midnight hornite, which has a 1 in 64 chance of dropping a blue eye and a 1 in 128 chance of dropping an iron mask. The next monster I wind up encountering is a were-tiger, which has a 1 in 16 chance of dropping some kitty litter and a 1 in 64 chance of dropping a cat hat. Following that, I went over to the western portion of this area to encounter its remaining monsters, the first of which is a shell slime, which has a 1 in 16 chance of dropping an SBS and a 1 in 64 chance of dropping a pale pearl. The second monster I wind up encountering is a toxic toad, which has a 1 in 16 chance of dropping some toad oil and a 1 in 64 chance of dropping a dose of strong antidote. It luckily began raining a few minutes after that very toad's defeat, which allowed me to encounter a notchid, which has a 1 in 8 chance of dropping some fairy fluff and a 1 in 256 chance of dropping a pretty Betsy. Following that, I simply waited until nightfall, at which point I was able to encounter a succubat, which has a 1 in 16 chance of dropping a wing of bat and a 1 in 64 chance of dropping a purple eye. With all the monsters of this area cataloged in my bestiary, I was free to scavenge around for some valuable goodies, the most important of which was both an urn of royal soil and celestial sheen only accessible through a monster mount, and a sprig of waveweed just east of the entrance to the grotta. I then went on to open all 4 of the treasure chests littered throughout this area, which net me a seed of skill, my 10th mini medal, 5 perfectionist pearls, and the recipe for some iron equipment. Also, because I forgot to mention this earlier, I decided to respec the hero into great swords in order to boost my damage output in preparation for the challenges coming ahead. I also went back to the area where we fought the Slayer of Sands to pick up a yellow eye, but that's neither here or there. With both my cataloging and scavenging of the Lagoona now complete, I made my way into Gondolia to begin plundering it for all its valuables. The only real ones of note are a pitch pearl and a dresser within a house of the Upper Eastern District, a chest containing some magic water which we tightrope to from the roof of the inn, our 11th mini medal which was in a dresser in a house in the Lower Eastern District, a chest under the overlook platform containing a Carre Riviere, and the recipe for golden equipment from a bookshelf in the church. We then get roped into curing this kid's sore throat, which meant it was off to the Grotta della Fonte for some more scavenging and cataloging chicanery. The first monster I faced upon arriving was a Man of War, which has a 1 in 16 chance of dropping a Moonwort bulb and a 1 in 32 chance of dropping a Rosewort. The second monster monster I encountered was a wizened wizard, which has a 1 in 32 chance of dropping a single file and a 1 in 64 chance of dropping a silk robe. The third and final monster I faced here was a Morphean mushroom, which has a 1 in 16 chance of dropping a Waker Robin and a 1 in 32 chance of dropping a bell cap. With this dungeon's monsters successfully catalogued, I went around opening all 5 chests found around the area, which net me my 12th mini medal, a pixie staff, both a green and blue eye, and a seed of magic. Before fighting this dungeon's quote-unquote boss, I went back to Gondolia to complete that gate guard's quest, which net me the recipe for some better armaments. I then spent a few minutes forging some new gear for my party before facing off with the coral colossi guarding this grotta's sacred Fonte. These enemies aren't really threatening due to how overgeared and overleveled my party is and go down within a couple of turns. We then synthesize a bottle of birdsong nectar for the kid back in Gondolia, but get blindsided by some Heliadoran tax collectors who repossess Eric for a total of 5 whole minutes before we sneak behind and challenge the tax tyrant's right-hand man, Jasper. Jasper has a total of 780 health and can be somewhat frightening if he manages to consecutively parry our attacks. However, just like the Slayer of Sands before him, we buff ourselves with Serana and Kasap him with Veronica, which, along with Sylvando Umfingus, quickly leads to Jasper's defeat. Speaking of Sylvando, he comes in clutch by nabbing us a boat, which we use to escape our near certain taxation once more, but that's where I'll be leaving things for now. Our ending stats for today's episode are 72 monsters cataloged in our bestiary, 35 accolades achieved, which I'll show here for those of you curious, and a still small, still growing Itemary. If you made it to this point in the video, then thank you so much for watching. Take care, and have a great rest of your day.
It just goes on and on and on.